All right, well, this is Infosec Decoded number 20, the whitest ever. So Liz starts with drug cartels.
Yeah, so I really liked the headline to this article, which was "Drug Cartel Now Assassinates Its Enemies with Bomb-Toting Drones."
Bomb, yeah.
Which is pretty impressive. Essentially, the drug war between cartels has gone high tech in Mexico because they're now using quadcopters to deliver payloads of essentially they're like sophisticated pipe bombs. They fill a Tupperware container full of C4 and shrapnel, and then have go bomb their enemies with these drones. So look out for that.
Well, the one I'm waiting for is the one the size of a mosquito that just injects you with one drop of poison. That would be really awesome.
Yeah, I'm sure it's being worked on somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, certainly not in my lab. That's for sure.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, then Irvin's got grep. Irvin? It's a little hard to tell what's going on with Irvin somehow.
Now you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes. I muted the mic. I forgot. This little app, I think, is fun. You can search among, 500,000 Git repos for anything you want.
Like passwords, for example.
Like password, for example.
Oh, there you go. It's unfortunately just a bunch of variables named password, not what I was hoping for.
Well, I'm sure somewhere in there somebody's going to have password : and then
yeah,
and then their actual password.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a very easy to search feature.
Yep, like Google for source code.
Yes, like Google for source code. So I'm sure it's very easy to find anything, anything juicy that people have left out in the open. Yeah,
that sounds good. And Kaitlyn has cyber attacks. They're worse than missiles.
Yes. So the Space Development Agency, the SDA, I should say the Space News website has this article about the Space Development Agency saying that they're not really worried about missiles taking down satellites because sending up a missile to take down a satellite can be more expensive than the satellite itself. Think about one of those dumb little Starlink satellites. They go up at like 64 at a time, right? And they go up as part of a larger payload. If you want to take down one of those, you essentially have to, you have to pay more than the satellite is worth itself. And that makes, missiles and direct threats like that very impractical. However, cyber threats are extremely practical in space, especially when you start getting supply chain stuff, because you can't go back and replace the hardware, right?
Right.
Once it's up there, and it's sometimes up there for decades. And that's one of the things that I've learned is that when you're dealing with space technology, you're not dealing with the most cutting edge space age, stuff up there. It's, this satellite was put up in 1986, and with 1986 technology, no encryption. That's nice. And you just work with that, and and a lot of space defenses is just being nice to each other and not taking down each other's satellites. But of course, that can't last forever, especially when countries start putting up satellites that other countries really don't want up there. And so, the Space Development Agency put out talked about this and said that, it's cyber attacks that we're most worried about. I mean, you could potentially take out one satellite with a very expensive rocket, but are you going to take down 64 satellites in a constellation with missiles? No, of course not. That's ridiculously expensive.
So I guess the solution is to jail all hackers.
Pretty much, yeah. So the solution is to stop all hacking, make hacking illegal, and just not hack anymore.
Well, I think this is actually a really fundamental problem in our business is even if you do the best practices, a few years down the road, they're like, oh, you fool, you're wide open. So how do you use anything that you want to use for like 20 years?
Yeah, that's exactly the problem with space travel. If you think about a lot of missions, even just orbiting Earth, you're not going to put up a satellite for 5 years and take it down. You're
Yeah.
going to have it going as long as possible, especially if it's in something like a geostationary orbit.
Yeah.
You're going to wait until the hardware breaks down to take it out of commission. And you want it because it's just so expensive to replace and put up there. So you're just dealing with a bunch of old, outdated hardware where they weren't even thinking about the types of threats that we deal with today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess then you need good staff to like secure it. Anyway,
I think the like I said, it's mostly trust. You just need to make good relations with other countries and make sure people understand that this stuff is for everyone and not just.
well, then we ought to refrain from putting weapons up in space.
I agree. That's a good idea.
All right. And Alan's got a ransomware gang.
Yes, Vice News has an article on the Klopp gang, aka Fin11, aka TA505. And Klopp has been in the news quite a lot lately because, as we've discussed on this show, they were behind the Excellion FTA hacks that hit Jones Day law firm and the Bombardier aerospace company and about 200 other companies. So they've been very prolific lately, and they've been getting a lot of attention, which they hadn't so much in the past. This article is a somewhat in-depth profile of the gang, at least as in-depth as you can get with a ransomware gang. And there's some interesting information in here about this operation, one of which is that Klopp is vertically integrated, unlike most ransomware gangs that have affiliates and count on other people or entities to do at least some of the hacking, and then the ransomware gang gets a cut of the gains. Klopp ransomware gang does everything, start to finish, pretty much. Not only do they do the ransomware, the malware, but they also do the hacking, so to speak. So that makes them somewhat unusual in this space. And they also have really pioneered the use of public humiliation and posting of databases online in order to extort their victims further. And in particular, they seem to be targeting the victims, that is to say, not the companies that they've targeted, but the consumers that happen to be in the databases that these companies hold. And that this allows them to leverage additional pressure on their targets so that they can demand more effectively ransomware payment from their targets.
So they're like,
anyway, it's an
creative.
interesting view into the operations of one of these ransomware gangs, even though there isn't a lot publicly available on this. They did agree to an interview with the reporter, but they did not divulge much information other than to say that there are several of them, several members, and that they've been around several years.
Do we even know what country they're in or anything?
There's a possibility that they're in Russia, or at least they are Russian speaking, and they seem to observe Russian holidays.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I mean, there was the Russian Business Network before this and a bunch of them.
Yeah.
They seem to be the most like business-like about this stuff. Yeah, right. And then I've just got happy stuff today. I got KiwiBot, this little robot to deliver your food, which apparently they're going to start using. And it's really just sort of like a rolling trash can, but cuter. And of course, they deliver like pizza and stuff. But my first thought is you could put a hand grenade in there. But anyway, this apparently they're going to be all over the place. It's all full of redundant anti-collisions and everything. And this cute little rolling thing will roll up and bring you your hamburger or your Starbucks or whatever. So
you can also use it to murder your drug cartel enemies.
Yes, it could be anything in there. But anyway.
I was going to say, one of the cool things about these robots is that they're oftentimes monitored by people in the background, and anyone can do that. So if you have a disability, you can essentially use these robots to have a job in, say, like the food industry, where you're like delivering food and stuff. So
yeah, just like the drone operators in the military.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. And that would be a good countermeasure for people doing bad things to them. Yeah, anyway. And so we made it to the bottom. Okay, good. So Liz has got a Bond villain coming for your children.
Yes, so Mark Zuckerberg wants to give your kids Instagram because it'll allow Facebook to focus on security and privacy for children.
Don't kids have Instagram now? I mean,
Well, you're not supposed to use it unless you're under 13. So they want to make a specific version of kiddie Instagram that's targeted specifically at children.
why would you exclude adults?
It'll be safe.
Has this guy met any actual children?
Ah,
You know, it's like how they don't let adults into Chuck E. Cheese that are unaccompanied by children.
Well,
it's
you might
just
do
like
that, but there
Well,
are adults.
what could go wrong? They'll be able to verify that everyone on there is a child.
How are you going to
Yeah.
do that too, by the way?
Yeah, no, this reminds me of like Club Penguin, which was an online game directed just for children. And oh man, that was a show.
It's like Club Penguin, but way worse, because at least they had avatars in Club Penguin.
Yeah. So
Well, we got to teach the kids to cyberbully early.
the ethical issues are vast and mind-boggling. I noticed that sentence. That's an understatement. And you're going to give this
I'm just glad-
Zuckerberg, who is like the most unethical guy in tech.
I mean, what could go wrong? It's just to protect the children. It's totally not for advertising and data collection purposes. And it's definitely not so that they can start collecting data on these kids as soon as they can get on the internet and use devices and then track them throughout their entire lives. And use that data for all kinds of nefarious purposes. It's definitely not for those purposes.
Besides, I was a kid that grew up on like cartoons and advertisements for cereal that were 90% sugar. Kids are a big market and they tend to be gullible. You can sell junk to kids.
Yes, you can. And, you know, they've not had the best track record with this stuff. It was just like a week or so ago where they got busted promoting like advertising like starvation diets to people who were struggling with anorexia and stuff like that. And they're like, we're sorry, it was a mistake.
Yeah.
So what could go wrong here?
Well, it's the same thing Zuckerberg always says, I'm sorry I got caught. I'll hide it a little better next time.
It was a big mistake. We didn't mean to, sorry.
We didn't mean to get caught. We'll change it a little bit so you can't catch us as easily.
Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty horrific. I'm just really glad that I did not have social media as a kid or as a teenager, because I can only imagine the horrifically cringy and embarrassing things that I would have posted on my social media accounts at that age.
Well, you know, I listened to Scott Galloway and he's like a brand strategist. And it's amazing how bad Facebook's brand is. Like he wanted to make his own money just a couple of years ago with Libra. And everyone in the world said, hell no, we won't trust you to run a bank because everybody knows you're evil. And, you know, if like Google wanted to, I don't think you'd get that reaction, or Apple. They're like, well, that might be okay. Anyway, all right. And then we got Blacklight. Okay, what's Blacklight, Irvin?
Blacklight is a privacy inspector. So you can put any site in it and it will run a browser for you and then let you know how many ad trackers there are, third-party cookies, any tracking that's evading cookie blockers, any session recordings, is it capturing keystrokes, and is it sending info to like Facebook or Google?
So according to this, my website is like evil and tracking you. 12 third-party cookies, 8 ad trackers. All I
I
did,
bet it's because you embed Twitter
yes,
on
that's
your
what I figured.
Yeah.
Yes, that must be Twitter. But I bet if I go to CNN, it's going to be a lot more. Television. That's where I usually take my students. Oh yeah, here we go. 37 ad trackers, 65 third-party cookies. It evades your blockers. It tells Facebook. That's what I thought. Oh, this is fun. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Fun little site.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And Kaitlyn's got mosquitoes.
I do have mosquitoes. So the BBC has this article written by Jonathan Amos going over, oh, sorry, no, this is the wrong article. Sorry, this is Undark, written by Taylor White. Okay, here we go. This is the right article. So scientists and engineers are looking to place genetically modified mosquitoes into the environment to combat diseases that are usually carried by said mosquitoes. So you have things like dengue and Zika that are transmitted by mosquitoes. And the idea is that they could make mosquitoes that aren't going to carry it, that are going to replace the population with these genetically modified mosquitoes. And I can see the appeal of that. This has not been tested, as far as I know, in this large of a scale before, but it does bring up a lot of technological and ethical issues regarding what our role is in sort of determining evolution and how we should be, changing the environment and changing our cohabitants here on Earth. So mosquitoes, of course, are not our friends, but unlike plants where we genetically modify for food and we keep them all contained, these would just go out into the environment and spread willy-nilly. And so there's some concern that maybe this isn't the best idea. But on the other hand, we could be preventing a lot of diseases, and no one really likes mosquitoes anyway. So,
Well, I think these RNA vaccines we all just took are the same thing, right? This genetically modified weird stuff that we're using to fight disease.
I think there's more of an ecological component to this, which you do not find in the vaccines. When you take a vaccine, it's entirely contained, within, yourself. You're not changing the environment. Here, we're actually changing the environment. So this is more akin to something like geoengineering.
Right, like the GM corn that we're all eating.
Right.
Yeah. Now, what I wonder, I always heard of them releasing sterile males years ago. Those were not genetically modified. What do they do? Just hit them with radiation or something?
I don't think I don't know anything about the males that couldn't reproduce. However, these are very specifically genetically modified to fight dengue and Zika.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking if you could wipe out mosquitoes, I wouldn't cry. It would be like wiping out smallpox.
Yep, that is true. That's one of the things that we did a long time ago. We completely wiped out this. We had a purposeful extinction of smallpox. Although there is a small amount left in a lab, I believe, somewhere. It's just frozen, but
as far as I know, mosquitoes are not essential to the environment. They don't pollinate flowers or anything good. I think we could just do without them, in my opinion.
Well, mosquitoes are an important food source to some other insects and animals, though, like bats. Many bats depend on mosquitoes for
How many
food.
damn mosquitoes would you have to eat?
What's that?
How many mosquitoes would you have to eat? This is like whales scooping up plankton.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm sure quite a few, and yet it's an important food source for them.
Well,
if the number of mosquitoes that come after me in the summer is any indication, then you can get many full meals from those things.
The journals of Lewis and Clark, they said by the third day, they ran out of words to use to complain about the mosquitoes, because the whole country was like Alaska is now. You'd go take a walk and there'd be like 10,000 mosquitoes swirling around you where you can't even see things. Anyway, we have decreased them a lot. Anyway, then I've got, this one was pretty exciting in a way, although sort of twisted. So this woman, Kate Tampkin, wanted to run Debian on an iPad or an iPhone as a virtual machine. And they don't support that because you cannot allocate memory and make it executable. So what she did was she used return-oriented programming to use little snippets of code the way malware would and run an entire operating system that way. And this guy said, this is actually incredibly creative and revolutionary. You make the whole software stack run using ROP code. And it actually runs, and it actually runs fast. And it's like a way to seriously subvert the whole security model of iOS in an interesting way.
That's crazy.
It is.
I can't believe this works.
I know. I would think it would at least be slow as hell, but they say it runs pretty well. It's fine. And you know, I see a lot of these things. First there was root jails, then there was virtual machines, then there were Docker containers, and there were just more and more of these ways to run OS on top of another by twisting things. And this looks like another option.
I'm impressed because I had trouble setting up chemo on a standard machine.
I know. Oh, it's clearly a impressive stunt, you know, like balancing 10 plates spinning on sticks over your head. Yeah. Anyway, so we got hard drives and SSD shortages now.
Yeah, this surprised me. I didn't really know about this particular cryptocurrency that instead of relying on space or on transactions and work done, it's relying on space, on taking up storage space, which is
that's also true.
Very interesting.
That's also true of some anti-quantum cryptography. The key deliberately so huge that it uses up a ton of RAM or hard drive space.
Yeah, and in this case, it's interesting because there's a cryptocurrency called Chia, which I hadn't heard of yet, and it was intended to be the eco-friendly cryptocurrency because it wasn't going to be consuming a ton of power, supposedly.
Instead of consuming a ton of hard drives, exactly how is this eco-friendly?
Exactly. I had the same question. So it's kind of interesting. And, you know, I was doing a little bit of reading about this particular crypto. I guess I've been a little bit out of the loop on the crypto world recently because I mean, it's crazy. People are
Uh-oh. I sense a disturbance in the force. We lost Kaitlyn, and now we've heard of lost Liz. Well,
yeah, that's
I think clearly we're under attack. It must be like the Chinese or something. Well, let's move on to something, and we'll pick on when they come back. I heard more about that. Irvin, you got Firefox.
Yes, Firefox is cracking down on super cookies.
Mm-hmm.
It's just another way that Firefox itself will be partitioning their the cookies that you go to, that you gain as you surf, and to prevent cross-site tracking. So what they want to essentially do is basically just partition every site. Every site that you go to has its own sandbox that can't talk to another site.
Now I think Chrome or someone is going to block Flux, those new super cookies from Google.
Yeah, I saw that too. Someone else is blocking that.
WordPress is blocking.
Oh yeah.
And is this so Kaitlyn made it back, and I guess Liz will come back. You know, that seems like that might be a large scale net flaw that we just lived through. Anyway, so super cookies are not Flux, they're something else, right?
Right, there's something else. They're not Flux.
Right, like Flash cookies. I know they've been around for a while.
Mm-hmm. But yes, this is for Firefox to say, hey, here's a way that we're going to block cross-site tracking.
You know, I'm thinking in the spirit of like ransomware, as all these web browsers start blocking tracking, they could then demand bribes to let your ads through.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, let's see. Liz has reemerged. Both Liz and Kaitlyn got nuked there. I think it must have been a disturbance in the force. So what were you saying about the SSDs, Liz?
Oh, just that I hadn't seen that particular method of implementation, and I started doing a little bit of research into that particular coin, and I've been out of the crypto news world for a while because I've just been focusing on other things, and I didn't realize it's gotten to the point where crypto is just like startups. Essentially, these coins are they're backed by VC money. They have like additional initial funding round, and it just run just like startups are, but they're for these coins, which is just very interesting to me.
Yeah, I think there's no escaping it. I'm going to teach cryptography again next semester, and I'm going to have to put a lot more cryptocurrency in it because I was hoping it would just go away, and that is just not happening. So we've really got to learn it. And one thing I'd really like to see is an eco-friendly cryptocurrency. I've been thinking about it, and I haven't figured out how to do it, but I think somebody probably has. There's got to be a way to make it so you have to mine it in some environmentally friendly way, or it won't work. Anyway.
Hard drives use less power, but I can't see how this isn't just trading one ecological harm for another.
Right. No, that's not the answer. But there is one that does sharding called Radix, which I think is a big step forward, where you don't have so many people doing the mining, and there are ways to select who's allowed to mine. And I think there would be ways to, my first thought, I woke up like at 2 a.m. with this idea, is you could have a class of people called miners, and then you could have a class of people called auditors that check the miners and earn a reward by verifying that they're not cheating. I'm sure there are, but I mean, you can, the sky's the limit, and there's tons of innovation and tons of money. So I think I've thought before, when I teach students cryptography, I say, you could invest in cryptocurrency, and that's like being a gambler. And I don't recommend that. But if you program the stuff, that's just a job. That's like selling shovels to the miners, which is where I think you can have a reasonable life and benefits from some of this wealth creation without having all the stress.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but I don't think I can ignore it. I don't think any of us can. Cryptocurrency is huge, and a bunch of it is all crap. But I think the ship has sailed. People have decided that this is of some value for no apparent reason. And it's going to happen. But I remember that's what everyone said about the internet. Like, what good is this stupid internet anyway? You're playing tic-tac-toe with somebody on the other side of the planet. Why are you doing that?
The students are really interested, though. They're excited for your class.
Well, and they're right. I mean, I tried to pretend this is going to go away, but then when Elon Musk jumped in with $1.5 billion, and now like Goldman Sachs jumped in, that ship has sailed. We're in a crypto world now, like it or not. Anyway, so Kaitlyn's got WebGL for fingerprinting.
Right. Can you hear me?
I hear you. Yes.
Okay, good.
The page is just like.
Yeah. So the page is on GitHub.
Yeah,
it's on jonathan.github.io. So I don't. Jonathan, good old John, wrote this article. Talking about WebGL and using that for fingerprinting. So the way that OpenGL and similar APIs work for graphics is that you can query the system to figure out what it's capable of. So you can say, hey, system, are you capable of doing like direct rendering or stencil rendering? Can you do 4096 by 4096 bitmaps or textures? Can you do multiple textures? You can just query the video card, figure out what it can do, and then program it accordingly. Now, of course, this means that everyone's hardware is going to be kind of different. I mean, obviously, some people are going to have the same computer, but as systems evolve, people are going to get more hardware, and different video cards kind of vary. So you can use this to essentially fingerprint people. And this is kind of a hack. Certainly not that many websites do this. Maybe some unscrupulous websites that really want to figure out who's going to your website is using WebGL to fingerprint users. But no, apparently a lot of top websites are using this hack to track their users. So this includes google.com, youtube.com, Amazon, Yahoo, not Zoom. Zoom is not doing this, but Facebook is, Reddit is, eBay is. But, I mean, all these big companies are doing this hack to track people.
But how much could you track it? Wouldn't every iPhone come out the same?
Right, but how many iPhones are there? You have the iPhone 6, the iPhone 7, the iPhone. Yeah, but the thing is that you combine that with other data.
Okay.
You can start, it's just another way of figuring out what browser you're using on which device. So if you have like maybe 4 devices, you can figure out what device they're on, even if they're using the same browser.
Are you sure they're doing it to track you, or are they just doing it to decide which version of the page to show you?
They're definitely doing it to track. I mean, Google does not have OpenGL graphics on their search engine page. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, Google also does track you in every possible way. That's
Yeah.
undoubtedly true.
Yeah, the same with eBay. And most of this stuff really is just looking. You can, because it's all in JavaScript, you can look at the source code, and this person does put the source code here, and it does show that they are just looking at the data and collecting the capabilities and using that to.
So this is how they're going to evade all the anti-tracking technology in the browsers.
Right, and the thing is, it'll work even in privacy modes too, because you're still going to support OpenGL. So if you want to see, you know, who might be on your page based on their IP and their, you know, web browsing stuff. Like, let's say you're in a small house, right? You connect using an IP with like 10 other people. But each of you has a different computer. You can figure out who is connecting to you based on the OpenGL.
Yeah.
You know,
this is one of the common questions I used to get from students is how much good does privacy mode do? And I kind of think nothing much, except it doesn't store cookies, right?
Right. But yeah, so like I said, these companies are really big on collecting all your data, and they will use any hack and anything available to them to try to figure out who you are and target ads towards you. So.
Yeah. I guess if you use Tor, it would not stop this, right?
No, Tor would not stop this. But like you said, you know, if you're just looking for raw anonymity, you know, if you are connecting through a random IP, you know, on your iPhone 11, how many people have iPhone 11s? You know, it's, you know, it can be hard, but in the right circumstances, you can totally pinpoint who's connecting.
Yeah. I hear a lot of advertisement now where they say you can protect your privacy with a VPN. And I'm like, well, actually, that just takes away one data point of the 10 data points they're using.
Exactly.
It's not like really making you a whole lot safer. It is stopping some attacks, though. Anyway, so Alan's got several things about building a home lab.
Yes, it's getting to be the end of the semester. So it's that time of the year when students start asking me, well, what should I be doing over the summer? What can I be doing to further my cybersecurity studies? And I always tell them, well, yeah, right. But me being a fuddy-duddy, not at all being forward-looking, I say build a home lab. And so these are 3 resources that I think are really good for students and that I'm recommending to students right now.
Good.
And the first one is called TJ Null's Guide to Building a Home Lab. It's basically a long list of resources and links to what you might put in your lab and a little bit on how you might get the hardware for it. So it's a good starting point, but a lot of students want more specific guidance on exactly what to do step by step. And that's where the second resource really comes in. And it's called Building Virtual Machine Labs, a hands-on guide. It's a book, an ebook by Tony Robinson. And Tony Robinson has very generously put this up on a sliding scale. So suggested price is $20, but you can download it for free if you want. And he does a good job of really taking the learner step by step through exactly what you need to be doing. And by the end of this book, you will have a nice lab set up for yourself. And for those who don't like reading text, there's also a video here, a webcast from Black Hills Infosec, in which they just give an overview of a home lab. So for people who prefer videos, that's probably the resource for them. But I would say if you have the time, go through the Tony Robinson book, Building Virtual Machine Labs. Highly recommended.
Yeah, this is one thing I've noticed in the pandemic is all of us working at home have got ever growing, complex, beautiful home environments to do our hacking in.
It's been good for that, certainly.
Yes. Anyway, yes, and students all need to do the same thing as much as possible. I remember when I first learned Windows Server, I went on eBay and I got like 5 computers, which then weighed like 20 pounds and had big blocks of lead in the monitors. And I piled them on top of each other to make a Windows domain. And it was such a mess. I was afraid that an earthquake would hit and it would fall down and crush me in my sleep because I slept on the floor next to it. But anyway, I learned to make Windows domains.
And it's gotten a lot easier now. And speaking of eBay, you can go to, I should have linked this. There's a website called LabGopher, labgopher.com, which is a price comparison website for all the servers that are listed on eBay, just servers. And it'll tell you if the server's listing is a good buy or not. And so that's a good resource for folks who are looking to buy a cheap but serviceable server for maybe $300.
Yeah, that's good. And of course, then there's the alternative of just putting it all in the cloud too. There's so many
Yes,
ways.
although that ends up being more expensive, I think, unless you get a lot of credits piled up.
Yep. Oh, yep. All right. And anyway, I got the last one here, which is the whitest paint ever. I heard about this on like Popular Science or something on a webcast. This paint reflects 98% of sunlight, which he says is so great that if you paint your roof, you don't need an air conditioner anymore. And if we painted like 1% of the Earth's surface, it would end global warming because it reflects that stuff back up into space. So I don't know how much of that is true or practical, but it does sound pretty awesome. And, you know, especially the part where you cool your house and you don't need to run your air conditioner, that's an obvious environmental and financial benefit and practical because you're going to paint your house anyway. So this does sound pretty awesome. And I don't know if there's some hideous side effect like it gives you cancer or something, but anyway, on the surface of it, this sounds like a great idea. Anyway, I think that's it. We'll be back on Friday.